Are we recording? Okay, welcome everyone to the fourth, correct? In our NOHBA Success Series. We're trying to provide, again, resources and opportunities to answer every conceivable question that an indie brand and a startup brand might have, because we want to see you guys successful. And a lot of us have had the opportunity to, try and fail and try and fail. We're willing to share that, along with a lot of the resources we found along the way. So the last three webinars discuss different aspects of sourcing. And today I kind of wanted to go over a couple of things. We have panelists with us who I'll introduce in a moment. I also want to announce that the next session will be on green chemistry. And so we'll really dig into what green chemistry is. And the first presenter, the date for that, Kate? The date for the first
May
one?
19th.
Okay.
And I'll put the link in the chat.
Right. Michael Cronin is on the call with us. And so he'll take over from me and doing all of this stuff for the next four. And the presenter he has initially is Marty Mulvihill, or Martin Mulvihill. Marty is the managing partner and co-founder of a company called Safer Made, and it is a mission-driven venture capital fund investing company and technology with the express purpose of reducing human exposure to harmful chemicals. I knew Marty because he was running the green chemistry project for University of California at Berkeley, which is literally over my shoulder here. So that should be really interesting. So that'll be the first one. I encourage you, if you really want to understand what you're talking about when you use that phrase, green chemistry, Marty is a great place to start. And he will have a lot of resources to share. Today, we are joined by Ashley, put your hand up. Ashley Prange from Au Naturale Cosmetics, Tara Foley from Follain, Michael Cronin from EO Products, and each of them are going to be talking about things specific to what they've done. I think Ashley can really talk about growing a brand, some of the challenges and walls you run into, what to do, what not to do. I am more than happy to talk more about sourcing and claims sorts of questions, what you can say, how you might deal with that. Tara has been through her own adventure in the retail world and can address some of that. And I think Michael, we're going to drop, I would say kind of managing growth, and, you have an exposure with EO products in a very particular part of the cosmetic world. And you guys you produce a lot of different products. So I think there's an array of talent and information. The other thing I kind of want to do is just in general, if you have questions, I would love it if you would put anything you have in the, the chat, which I needed to open up my chat. So we can get to those questions specifically, and then we can open it up for discussion. And then the other thing I wanted to do is kind of go over some of the vocabulary that has come up as a result of the sourcing series we did, and add to that, and maybe share with you guys specifically how we view those words. Because I think I'm seeing a lot of pushback on, for example, the term clean beauty. I don't really view it as clean beauty. I view it as addressing climate change, which I just wrote a whole blog about, because dealing with the chemicals in our environment ultimately is about cleaning up pollution issues. And I think clean beauty is a different way of saying that. So anyway, so I'm going to ask each of them. Ashley, why don't you start and just kind of tell people a little bit about the adventure of Au Naturale.
Sure. It's a 10-year adventure. I used to work for the federal government at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. and never really imagined starting a brand. So my journey is a bit unique in that way. I didn't go to business school or really hone in on a product to bring to market for a long time. It sort of just happened in my condo in DuPont Circles. So I really was baffled by the lack of transparency and regulation in the beauty industry as I started digging deeper into it. And the passion for digging deep into it was really out of selfish reasons and wanting better skin, right? Blue Mercury was right next to my condo, and I was so frustrated with, finding the right skincare, but only having access to makeup that seemingly exacerbated my skin issues. So I started making my own makeup. And then from there, talk to friends on how to sort of put together a direct to consumer business. And that snowballed, right? And then there was a need to manufacture and scale, which the formulations were mine. And I also wanted to keep formulating. So I took my savings, moved to my home state of Wisconsin, and started a lab. So even the way that Au Naturale is constructed, being vertically integrated, is fairly unique, but that's how we've been running. We've been in Wisconsin for 7 years now, and we've been sourcing from people like you, Gay, so that we can bring fresh color cosmetics to consumers, right? And the pandemic hit us in odd ways, right? That I think have actually made us a better business. But if we are looking at pre-pandemic, we were in, Whole Foods and supporting it direct to consumer and also brick and mortar around the country and in a few other countries too. So we are in a new place growing from that standpoint, but that's the high level story of how we started. I can't hear you. It's okay.
Tara, it's your turn. Tara Foley.
Okay, so thank you, Gay, for bringing us all together always. And I am grateful to everybody who's here. And I hope that people have questions, because I think this will be a great, robust conversation if we're all sharing our biggest concerns and everything. But so I started Follain actually after starting a blog about ingredients and what I was learning about the lack of good products and ingredients that were out there. And I started this blog in 2009, and basically this was on the sideline of working a corporate job in New York, and I was just in a tough time in life, and I realized that I was so impassioned by all of these amazing brand founders and experts I was meeting in the space that was trying to change beauty for the better, let's just say, that I decided to pull the emergency brake on my life at the time and my other career. And I decided to go to business school to give myself a little Cliff's Notes version of the space and meet with a bunch of more brands in the space. And I opened in 2013 our first shop for Follain. And Follain is, by the way, a Gaelic word for healthy and wholesome. And I opened our first shop, and when I opened with what I called an ingredient policy. So we had a list of things that we didn't want in any of the products we sold. And then we also always thought about the ingredients that we really did like, and we wanted to prioritize. And when we opened, we were the first, let's just say, beauty retailer. We were just a little shop in Boston, but still the first beauty retailer that had a list like that. And so for that reason, we call ourselves the first, clean beauty retailer in the country. Of course, when we opened, clean beauty wasn't a term. And of course, like Gay just said, there's a lot of issues with the term clean beauty. But, for lack of a better term, a lot of folks do like to rally around that right now. And so we were the first to put a stake in the ground about the ingredients that we really didn't want to see in beauty products. And we felt that if we could push the brands in the space at the time to make better products, they would then push their suppliers, and it would be a really great way to try and make change. And over the years, we've opened stores, closed stores, been all sorts of different things. We now started to make our own private label products, but ultimately we're still a retailer of beautiful brands and products that represent represent what we think is the future of the beauty industry. So it's a constant challenge, but I'm happy to share whatever would be helpful when everybody's, confronting their own challenges in their business or brand. So again, please, once we're done these introductions, please do drop your questions, because today's the round table. So we're hoping to have a robust conversation. But thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Okay, Michael, you have to unmute yourself and tell us about your journey to EO. And I'm going to start. Michael used to be in the dried fruit and nut industry, and I know that because I did too.
Yeah, I did come from food, very brief dried fruit nuts, but mostly, yeah, I started in bread baking, manufacturing. So I joined EO in 2004, and I've been basically the reason I locked onto him. We are, like, to Ashley, we are an odd brand out there in that we actually have manufactured our products for all these years, starting way back when. Or not odd, but it's a rare place to have that control. And I really came to the market because I wanted to do something that was helpful. My background is in toxicology and environmental toxicology, and I felt like I could make a mark on what we were washing down the drain and putting on our bodies. And then I also has always been had poor skin, and that was a product that worked for me. So I went to work there, and within the first year or so, was in charge of the lab, and I've been making products for them. And our gig is not so much beauty focused. Most people know us for our hand soap and hand sanitizer. But to Gay's point, we've probably made a little bit of everything except for straight color products. And what we really have been trying to do is to scale accessibility and kind of offer a certain amount of quality, green, beautiful smelling products at a price that challenges kind of what is out there currently. And I think I've done a lot of work, especially early on, really trying to stretch into green chemistry. And, I'm kind of with Gay, it's all over the place of what that really means. But we try to, my philosophy is just how do we would, in general, you just want to lessen your load in life, right? So the least we can do, the better. So that's kind of what we try to do with our products. But of course, we still want them to be very enjoyable to use.
Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's interesting because Ashley does this very specific set of color cosmetics. EO has a lot of soaps and lotions. And I think they've had a lip balm forever, and the sanitizer. Tara deals with all of this stuff, and I come from the ingredient side. And I have to say briefly, Munimi, I'm so happy to see you. I know you weren't well. You were gone for a while. You were not well or something, and
yes.
I was concerned.
I back to New York, so I see you at the Suppliers Day next week.
Yay, good, fantastic. I'm so glad. Okay, well, thank you. Anyway, my story briefly is that in 1991, I moved to a farm, the farm where Katie is my daughter, and her father had that farm, or has that farm. And I'm no longer part of that, but she is. And he wanted to get married and have kids. And I have a background in physiology, and I had worked with a lot of kids who had anomalous birth defects. And I was pretty convinced that from the evidence I was reading, it was really as a result of pesticide exposure. And so I really looked at it from the farming perspective, and I still do. Like, how do we make this stuff? Where does it come from? And how do the people who grow these things, how are they affected? So I started working with organic certification. We didn't even have certification rules for processed products in 1991. So I worked with certifiers. I worked with the state of California in an advisory position. And ultimately in 2000, I started OO Organic, which is a distributor of certified products. I believe strongly that we need well-stated standards to make specific claims. And the more I've learned about organic certification and how the farming methods impact the planet, the more important I think it is to use organic ingredients as much as we possibly can, not to mention the fact that they are renewable. So Organic, I guess we're in our 22nd year of business as a distributor, and we have something like 120 or 130 different products we sell, and we are adding products all the time. And I have a lot of resources as a result of doing this for so long. And so, you know, people call all the time, and I'm more than happy to share whatever I know, a phone number, an email address to help you move forward, because I want to see the whole planet a lot greener. So that's it. So I would like to hear if anybody has particular concerns or questions, either that they didn't get questions answered, or if you want to talk for a minute about some of the vocabulary, you know, and you can just unmute yourself and kind of jump in if you want, or type something up. But what some of the things I'm running into is I don't think there's a very good definition or clarity around the word sustainable. I think people abuse that one a lot. The other one I'm seeing, I literally have people calling me saying, Gay, do you have regenerative products? And there's no regenerative standard per se. There's a website for regenerative agriculture, and it says, well, first you have to be organic. And so I guess I do, I don't know. But I'd be curious what people hear from consumers, what concerns you have, what kind of questions you have to answer from your customers when you make a product. You know, how can NOHBA help you answer some of those questions? You guys, you can't just sit there. Jump in, have a question, put up a hand, put in a question. And if you want specific references for some of these, I'm a regulatory wonk. So when I say these words, I usually connect them either to an academic reference or to a government regulation or guideline. So if you want that kind of information, I can also share that. And then anybody else on here with their, you know, particular things like pigments, Ashley has had to deal with that particular nightmare. I think Michael is constantly dealing with a little bit more of the mass market and knows a lot about that. Tara, certainly with the specialty issues of a clean beauty retailer. I'm going to be quiet for a second, see if you say anything. I kind of also, Jennifer, would you be willing to kind of explain to people who you are and what you do? You can leave your camera off if you want.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I've got a dog behind me, so I apologize if she starts making a ruckus over here. Yeah, so I work for Lather. We are a brand that's distributed in our own stores as well as in hotels. And I think we're on our 22nd year. And the company was founded by our current CEO owner because she had a sensitivity to synthetic fragrance. So that is a major part of our story, is that we only use natural fragrances. And we consider ourselves to be a natural brand. We are always evolving in terms of our ingredients. So I feel like I'm constantly reformulating, and it's a little tricky to decide what ingredients I need to move away from when there's a lot of noise out there about, you know, what is considered problematic or controversial versus something that is truly not good for our health and the planet. So that is something that I grapple with every day in trying to make those choices. We don't adhere to a specific standard, but we look at a variety of standards and science and adjust accordingly. So I'm just always interested in learning more about, you know, new studies and where the industry is going. Our shopper is not the most, I'd say, hardcore when it comes to natural, but we're seeing more and more, we're getting asked questions about certain things. So I feel like I need to really monitor and evolve with the new developments in the industry.
I have a question then for you and for everybody else. Would a useful site on the NOHBA site be links to studies that pertain to our industry? I see them frequently, but usually they are like in the cosmetic press. Usually they are generated by the chemical companies that make the chemical. Hi, Robin. I see your, okay, so I've kind of added that because that's the other thing is we want to build NOHBA to be a resource. And we can do that through the website as we, you know, discern what people want. So happy to do, we can probably add that because I look at that stuff all the time.
Yeah, and also understanding which studies we should be paying attention to and
Right.
which ones maybe do not apply to the way we use those ingredients in our products, you know, that kind of thing.
And do you have like this would be a question both to Tara and, well, to all of you and to you too, Jennifer, just as long as we have your brain here with us. Do you have a top of mind sort of things you're hearing from consumers today that they are super concerned about or concerned enough to take the time to write an email or
nothing's really jumping out at me at the moment. I try to stay ahead of those things so that, you know, we don't have to defend ourselves for using certain ingredients. But like I said, I don't know if our customer is the most strict. So there isn't anything overwhelming that's coming my way at the moment. I mean, palm oil, we get that every so often, but that's been going on for a while.
yeah. Yeah.
I could share a recent issue we had. We had a blogger blogging about PFAS, right? And taking products from the clean beauty world, sending them independently herself to a lab, and then calling out brands based on different concentrations of PFAS contamination, whether that was coming from raw ingredients, the way we were storing ingredients, the manufacturing process in our facility. And I would say that that's kind of next level. We didn't really experience people going so far as to have things independently lab tested and then not sharing those resources with us so we could actually have an active conversation. And it was the first time I felt really put on the spot and a bit defensive. And these, they're not rabbit holes because there's certainly topics worth exploring, but like, how does a brand adequately address concerns like that? And Gay, of course, I reached out to you to brainstorm on issues on why we would have any trace amount of PFAS in our products, which we eventually did solve. But it's something to think about. I think no matter if you're a retailer or a brand, it's just like how to manage all of this in the natural world for maybe some people just want to know if you're cruelty-free and vegan, but then you have other people who are really concerned about trace amounts of toxicity. Michael, I don't know if you have had experience with that before, but it was certainly new for us.
It looks like we
Yeah,
have
I mean,
oh, sorry.
we haven't our biggest challenges have been kind of what you were from the outside consumers is, well, it doesn't really get into, we haven't had our product tested, because I think it's a little bit harder with something like a soap or lotion in a certain way. But I think where we're concerned is kind of similar as the Prop 65 kind of contribution from it being tested for either heavy metal that gets in there, or in particular a contaminant. We were recently working with cocoa amphoacetate contribution dichloric acetic acid. And, you know, while it's like, we haven't been like consumer came and tested it, we're aware that, you know, with more states coming on and implementing kind of similar Prop 65 controls and rules, that it opens us up to like the potential for plaintiff or that kind of negative press if somebody were to get on there. And I mean, the one that just popped up most recently with sanitizers was with methanol, right? Everybody started testing everybody's sanitizer, and but a lot of that was due to just people coming in and not having control of their supply chain, and then working with a proper, not only like the source, but then, you know, who's actually doing the distillation and the tolling, for instance, because our ethanol comes from South America. So I think methanol was the latest one. And then we internally are kind of watching carefully Prop 65 contributions and New York State contribution, which again is not so consumer focused, but it could definitely be there from a plaintiff's attorney.
Thanks, Michael. Tara, I think you had something you have to unmute.
Yeah, no, I mean, so we're kind of unique in that, like, people come to us kind of like what Jennifer was saying, as a resource for like, okay, what's the next thing that we need to look out for, right? You know, they're like, what, because I think ultimately what connects everybody here is that we're trying to educate on that, right? Like, we're trying to share and stay ahead of the curve, and trying to like figure out a way to take what new studies come out, and what like new information's available, and digest it in a way that's like easy for a consumer to get excited about, which is, I mean, that's super, super hard to do, right? And so people come to us, but you know, they also just assume that everything's been like vetted and everything. So ultimately, when they're coming to us, that they're then saying, okay, we assume everything is better than other stuff, but like, what's good for my specific value or like critical life moment that I'm in, right? So they'll say like, I'm pregnant, or I'm going through, quite frankly, we get a lot of people going through really intense health issues that come to our store, like diagnoses with long-term illnesses, that type of thing. They come just knowing that we're a trusted space for them. Or they'll have just, you know, been immersed in this type of education and research and, you know, for a lifestyle of health and wellness, and they'll come in and they'll be diving deep on a specific, let's just say like value system. So they'll come in looking only for a specific kind of like packaging, or a specific type of brand founder, quite frankly. Like, they really are diving deep into their value system. So I think it's a little different, for the retail side versus the brand, but it is, you know, we get these requests nonetheless. So, but I do know that Makiba, we have a question here.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. No, I just wanted to follow up on Jennifer's statement regarding fragrance. It's a very confusing space, because you have one side that's saying the other side isn't safe. And, you know, I went to a webinar, some of you may have been there, several months ago, that was hosted by a very popular trade publication. And it was kind of the clean beauty against big beauty. And there were chemists there. There was one specific chemist there that was so angry at the term clean beauty, because she said were you there, Tara? She said it insinuated that all other beauty is dirty, and that word itself should not be used. And then there were people in the chat saying how dangerous or how, potentially dangerous essential oils are. Now, I do fragrance. I have focused on phthalate free and essential oils, trying to use more natural over the other. But I received a list by the campaign manager for the breast cancer prevention partners several months ago that had a number of chemical constituents on it as being chemicals of concern, of which a number of them were naturally occurring in some of our favorite essential oils. They even had fenugreek on there. And I said, what's wrong with fenugreek? I use fenugreek for my hair. It's excellent. And so it really leaves you confused about where are we going with this? Are we going all natural? And then if we go all natural with fragrance, then you have the other side saying, well, there are people who are allergic, there are boys who are growing breasts because they use lavender oil. That study, which turns out it was a very small test group. And so I'm just curious, where does clean beauty leave the fragrance? Because I love scent, and I created my brand because I couldn't wear perfume. I was allergic to it, but I figured out how to make something that didn't make me sick, wasn't overwhelming, and that, people liked. But I'm just, and I went to traditional perfumery school, and I have my aromatherapy certificate. And it's just amazing. One says how ineffective naturals are, and then the other says how dangerous synthetics are. I'm caught in between both worlds. So I just want to get some feedback as to where we're going. Where does this leave fragrance? Sometimes I'm like, I just need to hang it all up and just move to my farm, But, I want to continue to grow my brand, and I'm very early on. I'm transitioning from one career to another. And I just want to know where this leaves the space, the fragrance space. Because I want to do good. I want to use as little, chemicals as possible, but it's tricky.
I'm going to say a couple things, then I'm going to ask Miriam to chime in for a moment. I think that, and I think Michael too, because of his background with environmental toxicology. Number one, that list that the Breast Cancer Fund, I've been questioning the state of California because they added it to SB 312, that if you make a product, you're supposed to register it if it has the naturally occurring constituents. It's very important to know, number one, that list came from Europe. They have a list of 27 ingredients, 17 of which are natural. They are naturally occurring constituents in essential oil. In the last few years, one of the things they discovered was that the reactions that they were seeing as a result of these oils being used was not the oils. It was that the oils were rancid. Right. And so understanding where you get your product and the quality of that product is crucial, and being able to verbalize that to a customer. And then the other thing is, I'm a physiologist. Bottom line, you test it. People are so different. Some people's skin loves coconut. Some people, they instantly break out. They have some sensitivity to it. I never call it an allergy. An allergy physiologically is a reaction to a protein. Most of the stuff we make in the cosmetic world does not have protein in it. So anyway, there's that. I think the other thing that really helps are clear definitions. Miriam has been in this game for a long time. Do you want to just kind of run down the ISO definitions and the difference between a fragrance, a natural fragrance, and an EO blend? Which I'm sure you probably already know with the other training you've gone through, but there are some some standards that you can refer to that I find helpful. And it's worth it to buy some of those standards. Go for it, Miriam.
Thank you, you guys. Makeba, right? I have to see your name. Yes. So I think I was on that webinar too. I know exactly that dynamic that you're talking about. And so just, I'm not a panelist here, but I'm a member. So thank you for just having me answer this quickly. My position, after being in the fragrance industry for 30 years, I've worked for IFF, for Robertet, for Agilex before it was bought by Firmenich. I think I called on EO. I visited you guys years ago, and I launched my own brand, which is Palette Naturals. But after having said all that, if the Buddha were to walk in the room right now, I would take his advice and say, walk the middle path. Neither side is wrong and neither side is 100% right. It depends on what your values are. And yes, there's science and studies. I'm not an MD or a chemist, so I'm going to set that aside. But the fragrance industry itself, the side that you're concerned about with quote unquote chemicals, that's a tricky word. And I would stay away from using that word because everything's a chemical, including water. So that industry is very well regulated itself. No, not federally, but in terms of toxology, they are well regulated. Otherwise, they would be out of business. As far as the natural side go, we are a young country in comparing to what Germany has done in aromatherapy in Europe. We're still young, and our culture in this country is pendulum swinging. And we all know that. We go from one to the other and we eradicate everything we did before. And we in this industry, in this niche of the industry, are caught in that with our consumers. So they'll throw everything out and go do this. We're a country of fad diets. We're a country of just looking. So we tend to throw everything away that was once bad and go over here. But then this whole structure gets threatened by that and calls that one bad. So you're now caught in the middle because you're trying to grow a brand. What I would say to you specifically is decide what the value is that you want to claim for your brand. And if you do want to claim that I have an all natural fragrance, then align yourself with what that means. And I can speak from my own brand, which I'm not a consumer facing brand, I'm a supplier. Our accords are 100% natural as per the ISO 9235 definition of an aromatic natural raw material. So familiarize yourself with that. What does that mean? That means that according to that ISO standard, you can only have in that blend the extracts, the molecules, the aroma extracts that come from that definition: an essential oil, an absolute, a CO2, a hydrosol, an isolate, a fraction, a CO2 extraction. Those are the ingredients that you can use, and then you can claim you're aligned with that. And then if your consumer has a question, you can be certain for them that you're aligned with that. But beyond that, if you're going to launch in Europe and globally, you're going to have to stick with the IFRA standards, even if you're with naturals. And that's a topical allergic standard that you'll have to, and that just changed. So a lot of formulators are curious and questioning, now what? You have to apply by that IFRA standard for maximum usage levels. Are musks bad? No, I think some musks smell terrific. But if you're going to be in a natural space, you're not going to use those. But it doesn't mean that they're awful. On the other side, some of these brands are saying we have safe synthetics. I think that's a very confusing misnomer. That word safe synthetic implies that if it's not a safe synthetic, it's an unsafe synthetic, and that's not true either. So that's, in my opinion, a very unfortunate categorization and labeling, which some unnamed celebrity brands are using that term, safe synthetic. So this space is more leaning, I'm betting, more leaning towards a natural fragrance blend. So my advice is educate yourself on what is the definition of that, and then align yourself with that. It's not just essential oils. Essential oils can be very hazardous to both skin, because what comes out of a flower, if you smell it or even rub it on you, is one percentage, one dosage, let's call it. But when we extract it and use thousands of or hundreds of thousands of pounds to get 1 kilo, then you're way outnumbering the quantity that Mother Nature would have let you just rub on your hand. So now it's on us to be careful with diluting that, what could be quote unquote toxic just by measure of dilution, back to its safe level. So the onus is on us to use these materials wisely, safely, responsibly for skin usage. And then as far as ingesting essential oils, I don't even want to have that conversation. I'm not a doctor, but that's not a safe use of those unless, unless you can watch the distillation process. So that's another conversation. We're just talking topically. Does that answer most everybody's
Very
question?
helpful. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the confirmation. And yeah, totally makes total sense.
I really like being able to point to a standard. You're never going to make everybody happy.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
just,
for
yeah,
sure. Yeah, I mean,
Michael.
Yeah, the for sure for me, the peace of mind comes from IFRA all the way, right? Because you are in a gray area, and I love essential oils. I mean, they're beautiful. I don't really, so IFRA, and what I wanted to add to just two things that we were talking about sourcing, right? So obviously, depending if you're doing your own blending, so you're not buying something that's pre-made, then I think most of those suppliers really should be able to, really give you the IFRA. And then also, RIFM is out there, but it's expensive, but they're really also working on blends. And I know some suppliers that have been around for a long time, they're starting to also be able to say, kind of help you, or I've gotten help with their teams saying, okay, I've got a blend here. Maybe I got 4 or 5 lines on my fragrance code, and they're all essential oils. Like, there's a team that can kind of give me an IFRA score as a blend, which is a little different than just getting an IFRA for just the lavender or the cedar wood. And you kind of have to figure out, well, am I doing something synergistically wrong? Am I going above a certain level? So I've leaned on the suppliers that are able to supply the individuals. I haven't done we do most of our work internally from fragrancing, so I haven't done a lot of outside with more fragrance houses. And then the other thing, I have gotten caught many years ago with adulteration. So from a sourcing standpoint, I just have to recommend there's a lot of distributors out there of essential oils, and they sound really good. It's just like pressing people to get as close to the distillation source as possible. Because we did have something where we ended up having a synthetic. I don't know I can't say that it was detrimental to humans at all. It probably wasn't, but I sure know that it made a few batches of hand soap go all haywire. So, but just from a sourcing standpoint, I kind of always just recommend getting as tight to the source, or the people that own a few farms and distillation units, and then just asking for that IFRA blend is super helpful. And look, I mean, like for me, because I don't see the green chemistry as being the scent. I know it's full of chemicals, but what I do feel now more than ever is like it's a great cue to help like people understand the rest of your formulation, right? So usually things that smell beautiful and are recognizable, like for me, I just want the rest of it to follow. Like that's a signal to the rest of the green chemistry that we're trying to do and be committed to. So that's kind of how I kind of get away from basil oil. I mean, it's like 65% myrcene. I mean, it's not a very helpful thing. What are you going to do? We don't use it anymore, but there's just like, it's too confusing. So I just try to use safety and then concentrate on what the carriers are and how to make that as elegant as possible. So.
Michael, would you send me and Katie the RIFM, any contact information?
Sure, yeah.
Or whoever can do those kind of calculations, and then we'll put them in the next newsletter.
Yeah, that'd be great. Unfortunately, RIFM is kind of a private entity, and
Here-
it's costly, but
Yeah, but I mean, at least they may even have consultants that they can refer people to. A lot of this is just sort of pain in the ass math.
yeah.
I have one chart that a perfumer once gave me that's got all the, you fill in your percentages of everything, but that means you need to have a very honest breakdown of the percentages of every constituent in the essential oils, and then have them all that are in the blend and know exactly how to do that math. So maybe that's something else we can look for, that kind of a tool, because that's really what it is. It's a tool. And I don't know, Michael, I still eat basil.
Look, I mean, mandarins, I mean, I don't want to go out too far on a limb, but I mean, I mandarin oil it's got some stuff in there. And I mean, well, we've been enjoying mandarins. It's this concentration issue.
Yeah, it is. It's got,
It is.
I
It's
also
really-
think it's probably the adulteration. Anybody who's a big handler of lavender oil will tell you that twice as much lavender oil is sold as is actually produced in the world. So that tells you that 50% at least of all lavender oil is adulterated. It's somehow rather cut with some other oils. One of the things that I learned early on is that they do, my first thing in school was archaeology. So you learn about C14 testing. C14 test tells you how old molecules are. So the older the molecule, the lower the C14, because it degrades over time. So petroleum, which is dead dinosaurs, so it's very, very old, has a very low profile on the C14 and C13, which are two, they're isotopes that you're looking at when you do the test. So a lot of the essential oil companies that are responsible are actually running C14 and C13 tests, and that way they can tell you, or they can tell before they buy, if something has had a petroleum adulteration, because they can see how old the molecules, because obviously a new plant is going to have super high C14, C13, because it's a new carbon molecule. It just grew, last week when they harvested it, or, this last season, as opposed to something that's a few 100,000 or few 100 million years old that was formed during the time petroleum was formed, which is a little complicated, but I love that nerdy stuff.
I think we have another question from Robin.
Okay, yes.
Well, just
Robin?
not a question, but just a comment to what you're saying, Gay. Too many people that I run across, they don't know that you just don't, I'm just going to add 12 drops of this and 6 drops of that. There's a science behind it, essential oils, and there's there's mathematics. I have a chemistry background and a physiology background also, Gay. So, and they don't realize that, no, you just don't grab this recipe off of the internet and then, I'm just going to do this. And I think that's the problem. More people need to take a essential oil chemistry class. There's just a chemistry on essential oil. And I find that's the problem. And another thing that people will say is like, this therapeutic grade of essential oil. It's like, there's no such thing as a therapeutic grade. It has therapeutic properties, but there's no such thing as a therapeutic grade essential oil. So that also tips me off that, okay, this person doesn't know what he or she is doing. And I've spoken to people who have brands that are in high-end department stores where they've said stuff to me, they've asked me to help them, but yet they're selling in high-end department stores and they don't know their head from a hole in the ground when it comes to essential oils. So that's just my 2 cents.
And it's appreciated. Thank you. Yeah, I think that I see a lot of things that they're scary. It's frightening to me, because to me, when you put a label on a product, you're making a promise to someone. That is a written label, and that is a promise to someone. And how do you know that those things that you say are true. The other thing I would point out along line of what you're saying is there's no difference between food grade and cosmetic grade for the most part. There are USP grades. You'll occasionally see like glycerin, USP. USP stands for United States Pharmacopoeia. It started in the 1800s. It was the definition of how pharmacists, cowboy pharmacists, those guys would make, things to deal with people out on the plains when they didn't really have a doctor, and we didn't have the pharmaceutical industry that we have today, certainly. But so there are certain standards that have evolved over time. Most of them are analytical standards. They say this is the purity level we want to test to. So when you see USP, that just means that you have to run a very specific and internationally agreed upon set of tests so that you can say that it meets that criteria. But there's really no difference between food and cosmetic. There isn't a food grade and a cosmetic grade. There's a C of A. You should look at a C of A and know that something is safe based on what it says on that and on the technical data sheet. Anybody else? So somebody, no, just people flipping their hair around. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I just think it's helpful to get together every once in a while. I talk about some of this stuff. I am going to see what we can do to add a studies page and then a resources page, and we'll describe what the resources are. We're going to try and put it behind a members only log on. And then the other thing that I think, Robin, when you talk about classes, there are a lot of very reputable, good classes. So we can kind of list some of those as well. So I would encourage all of you guys to keep an eye on the website and, let us know if there's anything you think we need to add to this general area of resources. And thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you all being here today.
Thanks, Faye.
Yeah.
You gay.
And I hope to see people in New York. Please come by. So that's a free show for the cosmetic side. I'm so glad I'm going to see you. That's so great. So anyway, see you all when I see you, and thank you. And please check in for our first webinar on green chemistry.
I got excited.
Yes, it's gonna be good.
Thanks again, everybody.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Ciao.